There are lots of animals that can live for far longer than humans can. Giant tortoises, Greenland sharks, and flathead worms, just to name a few. Some we don't even know exactly how long they can live because no human has been able to keep track of it since they are centuries old. But how are they able to live for such a long time? And is there a possibility that some of them are just immortal? Hi, hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about some immortal animals and how the whole immortality thing works in biology. I first heard about biologically immortal animals on TikTok, like I do most things, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since, and it's such an interesting thing to think about. Just the thought that if in perfect conditions, certain animals could just live forever, no problem. And the fact that there could be a centuries-old massive creature out there that we just haven't found and just don't know about yet is super cool and simultaneously terrifying. But I am very excited to talk about this, so let's get right into the topic of biologic immortality. Biologic immortality is very different from fairy tale immortality. Biologically immortal creatures don't die from old age, but they do die from external forces like diseases, injury, or getting eaten by a predator. So they're not immortal in the sense where they just never die. They're immortal in the sense where they never die from old age. And this is because their natural rate of aging is stable, or because their cells don't have a limit to how many times they can replicate. Normally, the older you get, the more your basic functions start to deteriorate, and your cells stop being able to divide as much. But with biologically immortal animals, this isn't the case as far as we know. Their natural rate of aging, also known as senescence, is stable or decreasing in some cases. So they just don't experience the natural effects of aging. So far, the animals that are considered biologically immortal that we know of are the blandines and European box turtles, the red sea urchin, the olm, the red-eye rockfish, the ocean quahog clam, the Greenland shark, some different kinds of bacteria and yeast, the immortal jellyfish, alligators and crocodiles, and technically lobsters. Now that's a lot of different animals, so I'm only going to be going over a few of them in this video, but if you're curious, you can always look them up for yourself. I do kind of want to do a video on the olm, because that thing is freaky looking, and I want to know more about it because it scares me. So if you'd like to see a video on the olm, let me know. But anyways, let's start with the immortal jellyfish, which is probably the only fully immortal animal on this list. The aptly named immortal jellyfish has the ability to revert itself back to an earlier stage of its life and restart from that point. The life cycle of a jellyfish starts with an egg, and that egg hatches into a larva called a planula, which floats around until it can latch onto a rock or something. The planula will sit there for a while before it grows a bud and then breaks away, where it will turn into one of the adult jellyfish stages. Now, the immortal jellyfish has the ability to turn itself back into a planula when it gets hurt or encounters some other kind of environmental stress, and essentially start over from the beginning. So since the jellyfish doesn't technically die, that makes it immortal. Now this is like a super dumbed down version of how it works because that's the only way I was able to understand it, but if I worded everything right, it's still super cool. So the jellyfish just makes itself younger, but what about animals that just keep growing indefinitely? Alligators and crocodiles, like all reptiles, keep growing and getting bigger until they die. But unlike other reptiles, alligators and crocodiles don't die of old age. As far as we know, most crocs and alligators die when they get so big they can't catch enough food to sustain their size and starve to death. They show none of the usual signs of aging and only die from external forces, which makes them biologically immortal. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that alligators and crocs can live in super harsh conditions. They can survive heavily polluted water and withstand high levels of radiation. So it's possible that their ability to live and grow forever is either a byproduct of their resistant abilities or a result of them. Maybe their exposure to radiation or heavy metals adapted their systems to age slower or not at all. Or maybe their natural hardiness gives them naturally longer lifespans. But since they only die when they can't get enough food, then technically, if you had a pet alligator that you were able to sustain indefinitely, then it would just live forever and keep growing, and you would just have a massive pet alligator. And so maybe somewhere in the world, like in the Amazon or something, there is a massive alligator that has been able to keep itself alive for centuries, and we just haven't found it or seen it yet. There are stories from indigenous tribes of massive alligators, so maybe it's not such a far-off idea, which already makes alligators and crocodiles way more scary, because they're already like super predators, right? So the fact that they can technically live forever and just keep getting bigger is so scary to me. So we have jellyfish and alligators, and those are the main two I wanted to talk about because those are the coolest to me. But I do want to mention a few honorable mentions of the immortal animal crew. The first is lobsters. Lobsters aren't really considered biologically immortal, but they're pretty darn close. If they don't get eaten, they only die when they get so old and big that the molting process kills them. Molting takes a lot of energy for lobsters, and the bigger the shell, the more energy it takes. And just like alligators and crocodiles, lobsters grow bigger the older they get. So technically, they do die of old age, but if somehow a lobster is able to keep molting without dying, there's a possibility there could be a massive lobster somewhere in the ocean. The second honorable mention and last animal we're going to talk about is the naked mole rat. All of the animals we've gone over have been reptiles or sea creatures of some kind, so I feel like the only mammal on this list deserves some love. Now, it's not official, but there are studies that suggest naked mole rats are biologically immortal, but again, it's not official. And honestly, I don't want it to be official because naked mole rats kind of creep me out a little bit. But if there was to be an immortal mammal, it probably would be a hairless rat, if I'm being honest. But those are some of the animals that are considered biologically immortal. I tried to keep this as simple and non-scientific as possible, since it can get pretty confusing with all of the massive words that they use to explain really simple concepts and stuff like that. But it's a really cool concept, and I'm curious to see how our knowledge on it will affect medicine and stuff. Like, how could we figure out a way to slow down or reverse our own aging process or something? Maybe they could figure out how to do that for cats, because I would like to have my cat live forever. That'd be pretty cool. But also, would this technically count as a cryptid? Since we don't actually know how long some of these animals live and how big they can get, would the concept count as a cryptid? I guess there's probably a cryptid story of a giant alligator, but I'm talking biologically immortal animals as a thing. Would it count as a cryptid? I don't know. I only learned that cryptozoology was a thing 4 months ago, so I'm definitely not an expert. But if it does count as a cryptid, then I am an expert. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Comment what other weird topics you would like to hear about next, and make sure you subscribe so I don't miss out. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my next upload. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye bye!